Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on what part of the globe you are on and what time zone you are in, and what times we are in. Oy vey. Mm-mm-mm. It's what a week we've had. What a week, what a week, what a week. It just gets better and better and better, doesn't it? One quick second. Let me just do a quick sound check and perfect. Video looks sketchy, but oh well. Well, I'll tell you what, I couldn't be more excited. Subpoenas are going out. The Trump administration is being held to task. They're not getting away with it. They're not getting away with much. Let's just put it that way. Steve Bannon will be brought up on charges. A couple of lackeys from the Trump administration have already been deposed. 8 hours worth of testimony. Wow. Can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but they've already started the commission's in high. It's in full steam. Let's just put it that way. So don't despair. Do not despair, please. Whatever you do, it is happening. It will happen. It is justice. The wheels of justice move slowly, and it's like watching paint dry sometimes, but it is happening. Anyway, back to the founding myth. Andrew Seidel's seminal work to date, Chapter 11, The American Experiment or Religious Faith or Reason. So we'll go ahead and start this chapter. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 3. We remember before our God and Father your work produced by faith, your labor prompted by love, your endurance inspired by hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. It will never be pretended that any person employed in that service had interviews with the gods or were in any degree under the inspiration of heaven more than those at work upon ships or houses or laboring in merchandise or agriculture. It will forever be acknowledged that these governments were contrived merely of the use of reason and senses. John Adams. A defense of the Constitution of Government of the United States of America in 1787. Not a very Christian, how shall I say this? That's not a very Christian outlook, wouldn't you think? But yet we're led to believe that all of our founding fathers were Christians, and the United States was founded on Christian principles. It couldn't be further from the truth. But what about faith? Was America founded on the Christian faith? The Bible says the faith can move mountains. Jesus tells his disciples, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. He repeats this in a few chapters later, with an additional benefit. Not only can faith move mountains, it can also kill a harmless shrub. Jesus smites a fig tree for not producing fruit, though he knew figs were not in season. Or did he? And then tells his followers, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only will you do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, be lifted up and thrown into the sea, it will be done. Notice the dodge. The impossible becomes possible if you have enough faith. Since the impossible is by definition impossible, the believer's faith is always wanting. If the stubborn mountain refuses to move, it is because the followers had doubts. A weak faith. The quantity or strength of one's faith is irrelevant because one can never have enough. Faith enough to fill a mountain would not move a mustard seed. The impossibility binds the believer to the religion, forcing them to seek even greater faith. If the Christian nationalists are to be believed, America was founded on faith, though some, such as Michael Novak, at least admit that a government cannot be built on faith alone. Reason and faith are the two wings by which the American eagle took flight. On the contrary, faith, at least when mixed with government, is antithetical to to American principles. But first, let's get our vocabulary straight. The word faith is used here as it is by modern Christians to signify religious faith. It is not used as a synonym for trust, confidence, a wish, a deeply held non religious belief or hope, nor is it used to signify an evidence based belief such as having faith that flipping a switch will turn on a light, or having faith that a spouse will not stray. Both of those beliefs are based on evidence. The light goes on 99.9% of the time. Your spouse loves you and it shows it. We don't have religious faith that the lights will turn on. We have a reasonable expectation based on evidence, a mouthful that often gets shortened to having faith. The Bible conflates religious faith with hope in a favorite passage of many believers. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This is right in one sense. Religious faith is not evidence-based belief. It is a belief in spite of the evidence. Religious faith is, as Professor Peter Boghausen observes, pretending to know things you don't know. Sound familiar? Religious faith is useless and even harmful when one is trying to build a country and government. Imagine a delegate at the Constitutional Convention arguing for 5 branches of government instead of 3. To support the claim, he cites his personal religious faith, because my God said so. He would have been laughed out of Independence Hall. Cornell historian and political scientist Clinton Resister observed that science and its philosophical corollaries were perhaps the most important intellectual force shaping the destiny of the 18th century America. It is hardly credible to argue that Judeo-Christianity, and especially Protestantism, is responsible for the founder's use of reason when Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, called reason the devil's greatest whore. Many Christian beliefs, including the resurrection and the virgin birth, require the believer to suspend, not apply reason. Hence, Martin Luther's argument that reason is in no way contributes to faith. Reason is the greatest enemy that faith has. It never comes to the aid of spiritual things, but more frequently than not, struggle against the divine word, treating with contempt all that emanates from God. American law and our Constitution were not passed down from on high. Some of the greatest minds of the day reasoned, debated, compromised for months, years even, to agree on the laws that would guide the new nation. Our Constitution is the product of human thought and perseverance, not faith. Jefferson rejected a faith-based government and any government attempt to declare articles of faith. The Newtonian principle of gravitation is now more firmly established on the basis of reason than it would be were the government to step in and to make it an article of necessary faith. Reason and experiment have been indulged, and error has fled before them. It is error alone which needs the support of government. Truth can stand by itself. Reason and experiment dispel error. Faith propagates it. The founders relied on the former. John Adams said of the formation of the American governments that it should never be pretended that any persons employed in that service had interviews with the gods. Rather, those governments were contrived merely by the use of reason and the senses. The framers indulged experiment when building America because many were scientists, though they did not identify themselves using that word. Franklin's scientific chops are perhaps best known. He tamed electricity. He invented the lightning rod, the Franklin wood-burning stove, the bifocals, to name a few of the most popular innovations. He also mapped the Gulf Stream, designed swim fins, invented the glass harmonica, and experimented with an early odometer as a colonial postmaster. Jefferson viewed all of Monticello as an experiment. Yikes. He installed several of his architectural inventions, such as an improved dumbwaiter, a revolving clothes rack in his closet, and a ventilation system. Jefferson improved the plow with a lower resistance moldboard, and he invented a wheel cipher, a swivel chair, and a spherical sundial. He also launched Lewis and Clark on what might have been America's first expedition with scientific goals. Washington kept meticulous agricultural logs and continually experimented with better planting methods, new crops, and different rotations. He invented a drill plow to help seed his fields along with a threshing barn, a 16-sided brick barn to help sift and sort grain. He also inoculated the Continental Army against smallpox. Variolation, an earlier, less reliable inoculation method, was used at the time. This was the first army-wide immunization in military history, and it dropped mortality rates in infected soldiers from more than 30% to below 1%. Holy shit. So the death rate, okay, think about this. Their inoculation methods were completely barbaric by today's standards. Yet the mortality rate from smallpox went from 30% to below 1%. That is astounding. James Madison's scientific curiosity led him to invent a walking stick with a microscope inside it to better view nature close up on his country strolls. He wanted a telescope walking stick too, and designed a chair with a writing desk attached to the arm, something seen for decades in schools. Remember those old 1800s schools? The modern desk, that was a John Adams invention. Amazing. Alexander Hamilton created American credit in the global economy. We probably owe more to his inventive ideas than any other founder. His reports, such as First Report on the Public Credit, Report on a National Bank, Report on Manufacturers, Report on the Establishment of a Mint, laid the foundation of American economic supremacy. Thomas Paine invented a smokeless candle and designed an iron bridge that Jefferson was excited about because it promises to be cheaper by a great deal than stone and to admit of a much greater arch. In 1780, John Adams founded the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in Boston, along with John Hancock and a few other scientifically minded revolutionaries. Many founders, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Hamilton, Madison, Paine, and others, joined the American Philosophical Society, which Franklin founded in 1743 as America's oldest scientific society. The founders even put science in the Constitution. The sole purpose behind patents and copyrights, which the Constitution protects, is to promote the progress of science and useful arts. They may not have been scientists in the modern sense, but the founders deserve the title, and not just for their contributions to agriculture, architecture, physics, engineering, and other fields. To the founders, politics and government were sciences. When convincing Americans to ratify the new federal constitution, Alexander Hamilton wrote about the science of politics and how it, in their age, like most sciences, have received great improvement. James Madison read and studied the most oracular authors of the science of government, as did his mentor and friend Jefferson. For Adams, politics was not just a science, it was the science, the divine science of politics. Why? Because politics is the science of human happiness. Political science sought to make people happy, not to repress, terrorize, and misuse them. Its divinity was a product of this world and not in any way supernatural. Adams also penned the era's most memorable line about the purpose of political science and nation building. Science of government, it is my duty to study, more than all other sciences. The art of legislation and administration and negotiation ought to take place, indeed, to exclude in a manner all other arts. I must study politics and war, that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. My sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain. The founders were not supplicants seeking to interpret divine revelation. They were political scientists using reason, experience, and history to build a nation. During the Constitutional Convention, they debated which theory of government would work best for the United States, and they put that theory to the test in the American experiment, as Madison dubbed it. That's how scientists determine whether their ideas are correct. They experiment. They actively try to disprove their own hypothesis by testing them. That sounds like the scientific method. Oh, that's what we're talking about. In 1786, Benjamin Franklin was asked about America's progress in improving its governments. He responded, "We are, I think, in the right road of improvement, but we are making experiments. I do not oppose all that seems wrong, for the multitude are more effectually set right by experience than kept from going wrong by reasoning with them." The Constitutional Convention met the next year and would be a tour de force of reasoning, political science experience, and enlightened thought. All were debated and compromised. Religion was left out, both out of the convention. The delegates rejected a motion for daily prayers, finding them unnecessary. And out of the Constitution, which mentioned religion only to prohibit religious tests for public office. The first the amendment was added later, and it too excludes religion, keeping religion out of government and vice versa. Many founders shared Franklin's view of the Constitution. It was an experiment. Adams regularly spoke of constitutions as experiments and wanted to see rising in America an empire of liberty. At least one of his correspondents thought it impossible, Adam retorted. "If I should agree with you in this, I would still say let us try the experiment." During his first inaugural, when Adams explained that thought, he, quote, first saw the Constitution of the United States in a foreign country, and he had read it with great satisfaction as a result of good heads prompted by good hearts, as an experiment better adapted to the genius, character, situation, and relations of this nation and country than any which had been proposed or suggested. Jefferson, who was also abroad during the Constitutional Convention, echoed Adams' sentiment in his own first inaugural. Would the honest patriot, in the full tide of successful experiment, abandon a government which has so far kept us free? Madison called the Constitution the great political experiment in the hands of the American people. The Federalist Papers, many of which authored, talk of political experiments 45 times, mostly to refer to testing theories of Republican government. James Madison and George Mason each skillfully summarized the unique phenomenon of American minds, crafting the American political experiment. Madison, perhaps the most brilliant political theorist at the convention, said, "The first question that offers itself is whether the general form and aspect of the government be strictly Republican. It is evident that no other form would be reconcilable with the genius of the people of America, with the fundamental principles of the Revolution, or with the honorable determination which animates every votary of freedom, to rest all our political experiments on the capacity of mankind for self-government." Madison covered all the important bases: freedom, self-government, the genius of the people, and political experiments. Faith was absent. George Mason wrote a letter to his son the first week the Constitutional Convention met. Quorum had been declared less than a week before, and Edmund Randolph had introduced the Virginia plan just 3 days prior. The letter shows Mason's remarkable grasp of the magnitude of the framers' task, and more importantly, of how it would be accomplished. The war for independence and drafting state constitutions were nothing compared to the great business now before us. There was then a certain degree of enthusiasm which inspired and supported the mind. It was not difficult to drum up popular support for a war. People need only be scared and roused. But, Mason continued, to view through the calm, sedate medium of reason and influence, which the establishment now proposed may have upon the happiness or misery of millions yet unborn, is an object of such magnitude as absorbs and in a manner suspends the operations of the human understanding. Nation building must be done through calm, sedate reason. It absorbs the operations of human understanding while simultaneously filling one with awe. There is no place for faith in such an operation. Faith did not have a seat at the birth of our Constitution. Reason reigned. Wow. And it just it goes on and it gets better. We are officially, we are so close to the middle. And I can't wait to finish. It's just getting better and better. It's interesting when you hear the founders in their own words. You hear them for the first time. And it's like, it's like you're learning about them for the first time, because everything you've been led to believe about them it's all wrong. When you read their letters, when you read their correspondence, when you read their speeches that they gave, it's like they are the founders are nothing like we've been led to believe. A lot of indoctrination has gone on, and I have to say I am the recipient of this of this indoctrination. I don't know how else to say it, because instead of a Judeo-Christian emphasis, I'm seeing a lack of, in fact, exactly the opposite, a disdain for Judeo-Christianity. I mean, just listening to the founders talk about, they're like, it has no place. It really doesn't. Not in government. And, and they realized that even way back then. Now, again, they would not have been classified as atheists. They would have been classified as deist. But as we know, a deist is someone who believes that there was a force, a God that created all things, but he has no direct interaction with his creation. Everything else is just superfluous and superficial as far as religious interpretation of what they see around them. And I'll tell you what, this book is getting better with each chapter. I'm enjoying it. I hope you are. And I will see you on the next chapter. Hopefully tomorrow. We'll see. We're going to keep plugging away. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to the end. And with that, I will sign off. Thank you so much for joining me in the reading of Andrew Seidel's The Founding Myth. It's been great. And I hope to see you all again. See you on the flip side. Take care.